We do not necessarily have comments and questions, or questions, I should say, in the chat. There's a little angst about recruiting by 3 or 4 people, shaking my head about all the 3 stars, and somebody else made a comment about where are the whales, something you addressed a couple weeks ago.
Hey man, the whales, wherever they are, they ain't here. So that's for darn sure. But Miami continues to be in the top 5s or 10s of several guys. There's a guy who has Miami in his top 3, and he hasn't visited, and we haven't visited him. And so I'm like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even remember this kid's name, but I think he's committing on like CBS Sports HQ, and I'm like, from where are you? Like, this reeks of 2015, where like just dudes had Miami hats on the table just to like drive the conversation, because like, again, even without being very good on the field, the brand drives conversation. Like, there's like the brand value and relevance of the Miami Hurricanes is ever present, even without being good. So again, imagine a world if Miami were actually good. And again, we saw that for 3 weeks in 2017, bro. You know what I mean? But yeah, this kid, whatever. But yeah, like you have a Ricky Knight from West Palm Cardinal Newman. He commits to Florida State. He's a 3-star athlete, probably going to play running back. Ja'Cory Barney from Miami Palmetto profiles as a wide receiver, as an athlete. He picks Nebraska. Recently, Zuri Madison from Lexington, Kentucky, picks Arkansas, which was pretty much the leader for him throughout. But all those guys, like, after they visited here, Elias Rudolph commits to Michigan as a 4-star Deerfield Beach defensive end. Justin Scott, 5-star defensive tackle from Chicago. He picks Ohio State after visiting Miami. So like, you're like, where's the beef? Where are these whales? And I don't want to hear about silent commits. I don't want to hear about, well, they, said, or they were thinking, or I don't want to hear about that. And, again, without going into all the chapter and verse, I tweeted it as we were kind of reliving recruiting from previous years on the timeline yesterday. There's a blue chip player whose name who went to a program that very well. They may or may not be the 2-time defending national champions. But anyways, who at the time of his recruitment, I went and I predicted that he was going to commit to Miami, because he texted people at the University of Miami that he was coming to Miami. And I know this for a fact, and went with that. And then got additional context from other people in the recruiting world later that was like, yeah, he did do that. But what you don't know is that he also texted 3 other staffs that he was going there to try to up the bag before he committed to that team in Athens. So, it's one of those things where I don't want to hear about that we've heard good things, or maybe kind of sort of, like, I don't care about the labor pains. Show me the baby. And at this point, like, yeah, I mean, like, look, all of the, you can't have it both ways. You can't say we trust the evaluations, and like a South Florida 3-star would be a middle of Nebraska 4-star, 5-star. And then be like, oh, well, we only have 3 stars and like blah, 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 which we don't only have 3 stars, but the ratio is not where you would want it to be at present. I get it. But you cannot have it both ways, right? So I think that there are some good gets in the 3-star group. I think that there are some that are maybe a little bit more dubious than others. At least I am more dubious of them at present than I would like to be. But, at the end of the day, you still got to go get superstars. You still got to go get these, 4-star, 5-star blue chip top of the roster guys. And if you look at all of the guys that we've spoken about as being, at the top end of the roster for the Miami Hurricanes, Tyler Van Dyke, starting quarterback, was like the third or fourth highest rated quarterback recruit since Kyle Wright in 03. Blue chip, Connecticut Player of the Year. He was the baseball player of the year his junior year, went undefeated on the mound, led them to a state championship. They went undefeated his senior season. So that's a clear blue chip guy. All the running backs, blue chip dudes. Leonard Taylor, top 10 player in the country. Cam Kinchins was a top 20 safety in the country, and has even exceeded what his ranking was to be, first team All-American. James Williams, who hasn't been he hasn't been Sean Taylor come alive again, but he's been pretty damn good. And again, was another top 10 overall player in his class. You know what I mean? Like the dudes at the top of the roster, the dude, Nigel E. Kelly, a high 4-star blue chip dude who I think is going to take capital T, capital L, the leap this year. I've been called it. I'm standing on that. Like I'm 10 toes down. I got my full everything behind Nigel E. Kelly taking a huge leap forward this year. But if you look at it, again, he's young for his grade or level, whatever you want to call it now. But yeah, he's young for his chronology or classification. And dynamic as hell. But again, if you look at the Francis Mauigoa, 5-star offensive lineman, probably going to come in and start at right tackle this year as a true freshman. Bro, at the top of the roster, you're going to have these guys. So that means if you had to get, and if you're just, even if you want to reverse engineer it, right? Let's look at all the starters. Let's look at all the top end guys on the roster and then go see what the recruiting rankings were. And if it's invariably or, 98% 4 stars and 5 stars, what do you need to go get then? More 4 stars and 5 stars. What are we not getting necessarily this year? Them 4 stars and 5 stars yet. And I do leave that open. And obviously, Marquise Lightfoot being the latest blue chipper to commit to Miami. Great. There are other ones out there. Outstanding. What's his name? I forget. But the 5-star defensive end from Arizona picked Arizona. Elijah Rushing, who was considering Miami and every other blue blood program, elite program around the landscape. And he decided that, hey, he's going to stay in the desert and, go to Arizona and, blaze his own path forward and write his own legacy. And why not put on for his hometown? It'd be great if guys in South Florida felt the same, but they don't. So whatever. But yeah, that 5-star that Miami was after, that everybody was after, he said to everybody who's not Arizona, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to stay out here. Cool. Fine. Okay. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to start to close on some of these guys. And I think where the angst comes in terms of like the comments, in terms of the fan base at large and things like this. Long story short, recruiting staffers at Miami have been talking shit. Right? They've been posting gifs, they've been putting up quotes, they've been, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We're grinding in silence, but we're going to be successful in public. You know what I mean? Like all those things, like, all the gifts of whale hunting, like, oh yeah, we're in the Serengeti, we're big game hunting, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that. Are you? Because I don't see it, and then it's like, well, I know people push back on this, but there was a time in his recruitment that Miami was at the front for 5-star Justin Scott. There was a time. Michigan passed them. And then Ohio State passed Michigan. And then, okay, now it looks like, well, Miami finished 3rd or 4th. At a time, a snapshot in time, Miami was at the top, right? But you didn't close. Well, these other teams, and there's a proximity, and the NIL game has changed, and da-da-da-da. Cool. But again, you're out here, all of these different Miami staffers tweeting all these things, implying and, not inferring, implying and, hinting at da-da-da-da-da-da. And then don't nothing happen. And this is repeated time and time and time again. That's where the frustration comes from, and hopefully that changes. But, we're into the middle of July now, and we're going to need to start making some things shake on the recruiting trail.